Okay, let's unpack this. In a world where headlines flash by in an instant, it's easy to feel like you're missing the bigger picture. Today, we're diving deep into a stack of recent reports that might seem disconnected on the surface, but, together, they paint a fascinating portrait of our global economy and society right now. Our mission for this deep dive is really to help you connect these dots, turning scattered information into true understanding and maybe those real aha moments.
Indeed, and what truly makes this insightful, I think, is observing how seemingly disparate pieces of news, from high-stakes boardroom deals and policy debates to individual entrepreneurial triumphs and pressing community challenges, how they all intertwine. We'll be looking at news updated as recently as this morning, July 29th, 2025.
Yeah, we've got everything from the very latest on global trade tensions and the future of AI to a groundbreaking railroad merger, the real estate market, and even some very personal stories about community and resilience. So let's start with what feels like the biggest economic chess game on the global stage right now: trade and tariffs. That August 1st deadline for President Trump's reciprocal tariffs is just days away, and it's certainly sending ripples through international markets.
Oh, it's a critical moment. Yeah. We're seeing various countries from Cambodia facing threats of a 36% tariff to Brazil potentially at 50% and even South Korea at 30%. Yet, amidst all this, the U.S. and the European Union have reached a framework agreement. It sets a 15% levy on most imports, including pharmaceuticals, autos, semiconductors. And considering the EU and U.S. exchanged nearly $1 trillion in goods last year, this agreement is, well, hugely significant for that relationship.
Right. And that EU deal we heard involves massive energy purchases from the U.S. But how realistic is that pledge?
That's a great question. Yeah, the EU has indeed pledged to buy $750 billion of U.S. energy and invest another $600 billion by 2028 in exchange for that lower tariff rate. However, many analysts are calling this energy promise quite unrealistic. Really?
Unrealistic how?
Well, it would require the EU to triple its annual energy imports from the U.S. And crucially, it's not binding on individual companies or member states. Plus, U.S. oil production is currently flat, and our LNG, liquefied natural gas terminals, are already running at full capacity. So any significant increase in exports to the EU would likely involve rerouting shipments from other existing customers rather than just boosting new production.
Okay. Moving to another major player then, China.
Hmm.
Trade talks just wrapped up in Stockholm, right? But without a deal to prevent tariffs surging again.
That's right. No deal yet, though negotiators did sound a sort of hopeful note. We're now looking at an August 12th deadline for potential extension of the tariff pause.
So what are the core sticking points for China in these talks?
Well, from their perspective, a central focus is the removal of those 20% fentanyl-related tariffs the U.S. imposed, especially since China has added more fentanyl precursors to its controlled substances list. They also want a rollback of U.S. tech export controls and the blacklisting of certain Chinese companies.
And China isn't without its own significant leverage in these negotiations, are they?
Not at all, no. China has been very effectively leveraging America's reliance on its supply chain, particularly for rare earth minerals.
Right. Those aren't just rare in name, they're crucial.
Exactly. They're a group of 17 chemical elements vital for everything from EVs and wind turbines to advanced defense equipment, consumer electronics, all because of their unique magnetic and conductive properties. China currently mines around 70% and processes about 90% of the world's supply.
90%, wow.
Yeah. And while the U.S. is trying to establish a domestic supply chain, the DoD investing $400 million in MP materials, that Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan $1 billion loan, we are still a long, long way from breaking that dependence.
Okay, what about India, another significant trading partner? Where do things stand there?
Well, President Trump has threatened India with tariffs as high as 25% if a trade agreement isn't finalized soon. He called the trade relationship very tough. But what's particularly interesting here is how companies are adapting to this uncertainty. India just overtook China as the largest smartphone exporter to the United States in the second quarter.
Really? Overtook China?
Yeah. India-made devices accounted for 44% of U.S. smartphone imports. That's a sharp increase from just 13% last year. And this shift, it's largely driven by Apple accelerating its manufacturing move to India, directly in response to this uncertain trade landscape.
So with all this global uncertainty swirling around, how are businesses here in the U.S. coping, especially smaller ones?
It's incredibly challenging, especially like you said, for small businesses, which actually make up 97% of U.S. importers, 97%. Many are finding it just impossible to plan ahead.
Do you have an example?
Sure, take Sarah Wells bags. They moved production to Cambodia only to face the potential for higher tariffs there than they faced in China. It's a real bind. A recent KPMG survey shows businesses pausing investment for up to a year. Large corporations have the resources to lobby Washington or quickly diversify supply chains, but smaller businesses are far more vulnerable.
And are we starting to see these tariffs actually hit consumer prices yet?
Absolutely. Yes. Procter & Gamble, for instance, announced its profits would take a $1 billion hit from tariffs. They're going to raise prices on about 25% of their products next month. And other major companies like Walmart, Nike, Best Buy, Ford, Subaru, they're also raising prices. We're seeing inflation in tariff-affected goods like clothing and electronics starting to creep higher.
Is there any legal recourse for these tariffs, or is this just the new reality businesses have to deal with?
Well, that's a critical point to consider. The legality of President Trump's tariffs, which are based on the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, that's a law granting the president broad authority in national emergencies, it's currently being challenged in an appeals court.
Okay, so what happens if the administration loses that challenge?
If they lose, his ability to impose tariffs could potentially be limited to 15% for just 150 days. That would significantly alter the landscape for businesses and consumers alike. Big change.
But amidst all this friction, all this uncertainty, we're also seeing some companies investing heavily in U.S. manufacturing. It's almost a counter-narrative.
Yeah, that's the surprising element here, isn't it? Despite the short-term pain, many companies are aligning with the administration's push for domestic production. Mars, the M&M's maker, they're pledging an additional $2 billion into their U.S. operations by the end of 2026. That includes a new $240 million Nature's Bakery facility out in Utah.
Wow, $2 billion on top of previous investments.
Exactly. This builds on $6 billion they've already invested over the past 5 years, and other major players like Hyundai, General Motors, GE Aerospace, Eli Lilly. They've also announced multi-billion-dollar investments to boost U.S. manufacturing. So it's not just about tariffs. It seems like a longer-term bet on diversifying supply chains and building resilience here.
Okay, let's pivot then from global trade to the broader U.S. economy. Despite all that trade turbulence, consumer confidence actually seems to be on the rise.
That's right. Yeah, consumer confidence did increase this month, particularly among people older than 35 and Republicans who had kind of soured on the economy back in June. This increase was apparently driven by perceived progress in trade talks.
Interesting.
And while fears of higher inflation due to tariffs haven't disappeared, actual inflation has remained relatively tame so far. Partly maybe because some businesses absorbed costs or they front-loaded inventory before new tariffs hit.
Right. And speaking of inflation, the Federal Reserve, they're set to announce their interest rate decision tomorrow. What's the market consensus and where's the intrigue this time?
The market largely expects the Fed to hold interest rates steady again. That'd be 4.25%, 4.5% for the fifth consecutive meeting. However, this week's meeting is packed with intrigue, really, because two Fed governors, Christopher Waller and Michelle Bowman, have signaled they might actually dissent and advocate for a rate cut.
A cut. Wow. That would be significant dissent.
It would. It'd be the first time multiple governors dissented on a rate decision since late 1993. And their argument is that with inflation near target and a labor market potentially on the edge, it might be time to ease policy. So it certainly signals a heating debate within the Fed, even if a cut isn't immediate.
Okay, so while the Fed is likely to stand pat for now, the conversation about cuts is definitely heating up. What about the stock market itself today? How did it react?
Well, today, the S&P 500 and NASDAQ composite retreated from those recent record highs. The Dow fell over 200 points. Seems like China trade talks remaining in limbo, and traders anticipating the Fed's decision tomorrow are weighing things down.
Makes sense. And it's a big earnings week, too.
Huge week for corporate earnings,
Yeah.
yeah. Tech giants like Meta, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, they're all set to report soon. Big market movers, potentially.
Any standout movers in the market today that give us a sense of maybe sector-specific trends?
Absolutely. Let's see, UPS shares plunged 10%. That was after the shipping company failed to provide full-year guidance due to macroeconomic uncertainty. That's often seen as a bellwether for shipping volumes, so that's notable.
Yeah, definitely.
Eli Lilly also sank 5%. That followed Novo Nordisk's report of weaker-than-expected Wegovy demand. Really highlights the fierce competition in the weight loss drug market.
Okay. Any upsides?
On the flip side, yeah, Boeing climbed 2.3%. They posted a slimmer than expected quarterly loss and delivered the most airplanes since 2018, so maybe signaling a potential turnaround there. And Sarepta Therapeutics saw a significant 25% rally. That was after the FDA recommended removing its voluntary hold on Elevidys, which is huge for its rare disease drug.
Big news for them.
And one more, Goldman Sachs raised its price target for Sphere Entertainment, citing new international franchise deals. Suggests maybe some optimism for parts of the entertainment industry.
Okay, shifting gears again, let's talk real estate. What's the latest on home prices and housing affordability across the U.S.? Still tough out there.
Oh, very tough. The U.S. median home price hit another record high, $435,300 in June. That's up 2% from a year ago, marking the 24th straight month of annual price growth.
24 straight months.
Yep. And with mortgage rates hovering around 6.81%, a median-priced home with a 20% down payment now costs about $2,273 per month, just for the mortgage alone. This just continues to push many potential buyers out of the market, especially, first-time home buyers.
But I also saw something about affordable housing becoming more profitable. That feels like a bit of a contradiction, doesn't it?
It does, yeah, on the surface. But this raises an important question about how we actually address the housing supply shortage. What's happening is real estate developers are saying affordable housing could indeed become more profitable. That's thanks to the recently passed tax and spending bill, which expanded the low-income housing tax credit.
The tax credit expansion.
Exactly. It's a crucial federal tax credit program designed to incentivize creating and preserving affordable rental housing. This expansion is expected to produce or preserve over 1 million additional affordable rental homes between 2026 and 2035.
Okay, that sounds promising.
It is, but there's a counterforce. The Trump administration has proposed a $27 billion cut in federal rental assistance, and that's causing some lenders to pull back already, so it creates this real push-pull dynamic for future affordable housing projects.
Okay. From the macro housing market, let's maybe zoom in on individual finance for a second. How new tools are emerging. We saw big news from Citi, right? 2 new credit cards hitting the market.
That's right, yeah. Citi introduced the new Citi Strata Elite card. It's a premium option, a $595 annual fee, clearly targeting the luxury travel and dining segment. It offers a really high 12x rewards rate on hotels, car rentals, attractions booked through their travel portal, citytravel.com, plus 6x on restaurants during what they call City Nights Friday and Saturday evenings.
Okay, so high rewards for high spenders.
Pretty much. It also comes with up to $300 in annual hotel benefits, a $200 annual splurge credit from selected brands, and crucially, the ability to transfer points to American Airlines. And then for sort of everyday use, they've rebranded the old Citi Rewards Plus card into the Citi Strata card.
The non-elite version.
Right. No annual fee, lets you choose your own 3x rewards category from a list of options, and offers an introductory 0% APR period on new purchases and balance transfers. It's a clear move to capture, different segments of the consumer finance market.
Okay. Let's shift now to some of the most innovative and rapidly evolving sectors, starting with artificial intelligence. What's new in the world of AI this week? Anything jump out?
Well, OpenAI just announced a new study mode product within ChatGPT. It's designed to help students work through problems step by step, rather than just, giving them the direct answers.
More of a tutor than a cheat sheet.
Exactly. And OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, who is actually a notable Stanford University dropout himself, he even suggested that AI could dramatically change the future of education. He apparently said he believed his own child would probably not go to college. It really signals a move towards AI as a dynamic learning tool, not just an answer generator.
Interesting perspective. And also big news from Tesla and Samsung in the chip space.
Yeah.
This sounds pretty significant for future AI development.
Oh, here's where it gets really interesting, yeah. Elon Musk announced that Tesla and Samsung have signed a $16.5 billion deal.
$16.5 billion.
Yep. For Samsung to make Tesla's next-generation AI6 chip at its new factory down in Taylor, Texas. This is a significant boost for Samsung's contract manufacturing business, its foundry business. They currently hold only about an 8% share of the global foundry market, far behind the industry leader TSMC. So this is a huge play for them in the ongoing race for AI hardware dominance.
Definitely a big win for Samsung. We also saw China make moves in global AI governance this week.
Yeah.
What's the strategic implication of that move?
Right. China proposed a global action plan for AI governance, and this came just days after the U.S. unveiled its own plan, which was more focused on promoting American dominance in the field. China's AI industry is just booming, fueled by enormous government and private sector spending. And Chinese startups are quickly developing AI models that are, in some cases, outpacing U.S. models on cost and capability.
So it's a tech race and a governance race.
Exactly. The true deep dive here, I think, is realizing that the race in AI isn't just about technological superiority, but it's also about establishing global governance norms. Who sets the rules will ultimately dictate the ethical, economic, and even societal future of this transformative technology. Big stakes.
Absolutely. Okay, from the cutting edge of AI, let's shift gears to transportation. Elon Musk's other company, the Boring Company, is back in the news. A new project in Nashville.
That's right. The Boring Company announced a partnership with Nashville officials for something called the Music City Loop. It's a tunnel system aimed at alleviating airport traffic, and it's pitched as being 100% privately funded, aiming for completion within just 2 years.
2 years sounds ambitious, but their track record, well, it's been mixed, hasn't it? What's different about this Nashville project that might give it a better chance of success, or are we maybe seeing a pattern of overpromising here?
That's a fair challenge, yeah. I mean, while the Las Vegas Loop does exist, though, importantly, it uses human-driven Teslas in standard tunnels, not the original Hyperloop vision.
Right, not quite the sci-fi dream.
Not quite. And previous ambitious projects in cities like Chicago, Fort Lauderdale, Los Angeles, they've been quietly canceled or postponed. The Nashville pitch does highlight private funding and maybe a more focused scope, aiming perhaps to avoid some of the regulatory and logistical hurdles faced elsewhere. But, the company will certainly need to prove it can deliver this time. The proof will be in the pudding, as they say.
Indeed. And what's happening with traditional airlines right now? Sounds like some turbulence there, too.
Definitely some turbulence. Spirit Airlines is preparing to furlough 270 pilots and demote another 140 this fall. These are part of significant cost-cutting measures after they emerged from bankruptcy protection earlier this year. Really underscores the challenges in that budget airline sector.
Tough times for them.
Yeah. And meanwhile, United Airlines flight attendants also rejected a new labor contract. That contract included immediate raises of at least 26%, so it indicates ongoing labor disputes simmer within the broader industry, too.
But not all bad news in travel.
Not all bad, no. On a brighter note, Royal Caribbean raised its full-year guidance. That's due to strong cruise bookings. They noted that younger travelers are increasingly choosing experience-driven vacations and seem willing to pay a premium for them. So it seems different segments of the travel industry are experiencing very different fortunes right now.
Interesting divergence. Okay, and from the skies down to the rails, there's a massive consolidation potentially happening in the rail industry. This could completely reshape freight transportation, couldn't it?
Huge news. Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern announced a $72 billion merger. If it goes through, it would create America's first truly transcontinental freight railroad.
$62 billion.
Yeah, it's the largest deal ever in the sector, and it will absolutely serve as a major test for antitrust regulators. Now, while transcontinental rail service has technically existed since 1869, this merger would, in theory, eliminate the need for goods to be handed off between separate railroad companies mid-journey.
Smoother flow, potentially.
Potentially. Though, it's worth noting, experts point out that there aren't actually that many containers that currently move all the way from one coast to the other in practice, so the immediate impact might be less dramatic than it sounds for some goods.
Okay, interesting nuance there. From physical infrastructure reshaping, let's shift quickly to the digital backbone of our economy. Cybersecurity. Seeing a huge acquisition potentially on the horizon there, too.
Yep, big potential deal. Palo Alto Networks is reportedly in talks to acquire CyberArk for over $20 billion.
$20 billion for CyberArk.
That's the report. This would bring together two really significant players in the security sector. It highlights the increasingly critical role of cloud security and also maybe the new evolving threats emerging from rapid advancements in artificial intelligence. It feels like a sign of how companies are trying to scale up to meet increasingly sophisticated cyber challenges. Consolidation for strength.
Makes sense. Okay, moving now to some of the more impactful and sometimes unexpected headlines. We're seeing continued developments in the Jeffrey Epstein case with lots of lingering questions and public demands for more information.
Indeed, yeah. Ghislaine Maxwell's lawyer has stated she will only answer questions from the House Oversight Committee if she's granted immunity or executive clemency from President Trump. The committee has refused to grant immunity. And this comes after the Justice Department also refused to release investigative files in the Epstein case, which sparked significant public backlash, as you might imagine.
Right. And President Trump's comments on his connection.
Yes, President Trump recently stated he cut ties with Epstein because he stole workers from his Mar-a-Lago spa, including Virginia Giuffre, who was one of Epstein's best-known accusers and who tragically died by suicide earlier this year. It's a very fraught situation.
And this whole controversy is getting a lot of airtime, isn't it? Even from some maybe unexpected and influential voices.
It really is. What's particularly noteworthy, I think, is how podcasts like the Joe Rogan Experience, which is one of the most popular in the U.S., are amplifying this story. Rogan has openly criticized the Trump administration for not releasing more information, calling it gaslighting, I believe was his term. And this really reflects those lingering questions and demands from various public figures for the government to just release everything related to the Epstein files. It shows how a story can gain traction and sustain momentum well beyond traditional media cycles.
Shifting gears to the workplace now. Love contracts. This is becoming a new topic of discussion. What exactly are these, and why are companies suddenly looking at them?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. After that viral video involving the Astronomer CEO Andy Byron and the Chief People Officer Kristen Cabot led to their resignations, companies are sort of being reminded again of the legal risks of workplace romances, especially those involving managers and subordinates or anyone in HR.
Right, the power dynamics.
Exactly. So love contracts are essentially formal agreements. They disclose the relationship to the company, and they outline how potential conflicts of interest will be managed going forward. Legal experts are now recommending these, along with having clear disclosure policies in place to help companies assess the risks and make necessary changes, like maybe reassigning oversight to mitigate potential liabilities down the line.
Proactive risk management, essentially.
Pretty much, yeah.
And sadly, some truly tragic news out of New York City following a shooting incident there this week.
Yes, very tragic. There was a shooting incident at a Midtown Manhattan office tower. It houses major businesses like the NFL, Blackstone, KPMG. Police identified the shooter as Shane Tamura, 27. He killed 4 people, including an NYPD officer, before dying himself.
Just awful. Any indication of motive?
Well, preliminary investigations suggest he intended to go to the NFL offices, and a note he left apparently hinted at a grievance over chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE.
CTE, the brain disease.
Yes, the degenerative brain disease often associated with repeated head impacts, common in football. But the reports say he had only played high school football, so the connection is still unclear, but it was mentioned in the note. It's just a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of violence.
Indeed. Finally, let's talk about cuts to public media and their direct impact on communities. This feels really important, but maybe less flashy than some other headlines.
It does, and it raises a really important question about how essential public services are funded in this country. President Trump signed $9 billion in cuts recently, and that includes $1.1 billion from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
And CPB funds NPR and PBS stations, right?
Exactly. And this is having a direct, immediate impact on vital local services. Take KBRW in Alaska, for example. It's a tribally licensed public radio station. It relies on CPB for 40% of its funding. And it serves these remote Inupiat villages, providing local news, cultural programming in Inupiaq, and, critically, emergency alerts.
So for some communities, it's a lifeline.
Absolutely. The fear is that without this federal funding, stations like KBRW could just go dark. And that leaves entire communities disconnected, without access to vital information, weather warnings, cultural connection.
Wow. And these cuts, they extend even to the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, right? Formerly known as food stamps.
Yes. President Trump's One Big Beautiful Bill Act, as it was called, makes the largest cuts to SNAP in the program's history. It reduces federal spending by about $187 billion over the next decade.
That's a huge number. What's the potential impact?
Well, it jeopardizes assistance for over 42 million people, and it also imperils the program's role as an economic anchor for grocery stores, especially small independent ones like Wright's Market in Alabama, which apparently relies on SNAP for a third of its sale.
A third. That's significant.
Very significant. And studies also show that the work requirements often tied to these cuts don't necessarily increase employment significantly. Instead, they could lead to major job losses in the food-related sector itself and push more people towards food banks, which currently lack the capacity to fill the immense need this would likely create.
So a lot to take in there. What does all this mean for us? I mean, we've traced how global trade policies ripple down to the prices you pay, maybe even where your phone is manufactured now.
Yeah.
We've explored how market dynamics are playing out, from record home prices to massive corporate acquisitions and these surprising shifts in the travel industry. And we've touched on how technology, justice, government funding are profoundly shaping our communities and individual lives.
If we try to connect this all back to the bigger picture, it's just so clear that everything is interconnected, isn't it? The sources we've explored today really highlight the complexity of modern challenges and the surprising ways different sectors influence one another. It's really not just about the individual headlines, it's about understanding the underlying forces driving them and the ripple effects they create.
So what stands out to you about this deep dive we just took? As we look ahead, maybe just briefly, how do you think these diverse trends, from trade wars reshaping global supply chains to AI transforming education and governance, and these debates over public services directly affecting local communities, how do you think these might continue to unfold in the coming months? It leaves a lot to think about. We really encourage you, the listener, to keep observing these connections, keep asking those critical questions, and looking for the surprising ways the world continues to adapt and transform around us.